Hello, I'm Caroline Fairchild, and welcome to LinkedIn News Live, where the business conversation begins with you. Caregiving demands remain a top driver of employee mental health concerns. That's because if you have dependents, whether underage children or seniors to take care of, many employers still do not offer support. And with caregiving costs rising and wages stagnant, caregivers are left with very few alternatives. So what are the solutions, and how can corporate America play a bigger and better role? Joining me now is CEO of Care.com, Tim Allen. He is a 15-year veteran of the media and tech company IAC, where he played a pivotal role shaping brands such as Vimeo and Ask.com. Did his undergrad at the University of Massachusetts and received his MBA from Northeastern University. Tim, welcome to LinkedIn News Live.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and joining Tim and I in this discussion is Tina Chen, a woman who needs no introduction, but she's the CEO and president of Time's Up, which runs the Care Economy Business Council. She got her bachelor's from Harvard University and her JD from Northwestern. She was the co-founder of Habit Advisors, a consultancy that advises on inclusive, equitable workplaces. Prior to that, she worked in the Obama White House, serving as chief of staff to Michelle Obama. Tina, it's great to see you again.
No, it's great to be with you.
All right, well, let's start with the Care Economy Business Council. This was a coalition of 200 businesses that was started just last month. Tina, I'll start with you. How is that initiative going, and where did it come from?
Well, thank you, Carolyn. And I want to thank Tim for being a member, one of our founding members of the Care Economy Business Council. And it came from the realization that in this pandemic, the caregiving crisis that, let's be real, has existed for a long time. As a single working mom, I experienced it my whole career. But really the pandemic, I think, ripped the cover off of that challenge that workers in this country have had for a long time. And employers now realize that they have a role to play. They have a critical role to play in addressing the caregiving needs. So the Caregiving Business, Care Economy Business Council that we formed at Time's Up is really bringing those business leaders together, from large businesses and small businesses, startups, manufacturing, online. It's a real diversity of business leaders across the country who realize we need to address caregiving, and we want to learn how to do it better, and we want to give our voice to the public need for it. I will say, Carolyn, since we launched just about 3 weeks ago, we started with 200 companies. We've got 70 more who've just come on board in the last 3 weeks, because this is a need, I think, that businesses see across the country, and they want to be a part of the solution.
And Tim, that growing need that Tina is talking about is leading all these other businesses wanting to join the council. And it comes from this pandemic. What I think is so interesting about you, Tim, is that you took over Care.com right before this pandemic started. So talk to us a little bit about what the challenges have been that you've been facing this year. And I know that you have a personal connection to Care that I'd love for the members in this stream to hear a little bit more about.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been interesting. So I took over Care.com about 3 weeks before the pandemic hit full blown and everyone went into lockdown. So I highly advise you don't take over a company right before then, because you're getting your feet wet and trying to learn it. But we have to tell you, we went headfirst into it. The issue at stake here, though, was there was a crumbling childcare infrastructure beforehand. There was a monolithic 9 to 5. You would drop your kid into daycare, or you have to configure different versions of care, whether that's after school or after school programs and activities, and you would really have to hobble together how it would work. What we're really seeing the transformation, and especially as Tina mentioned, with businesses now playing an active role in helping parents really find their support that they need, is in configurable care, flexible care, dynamic care that meets the needs of the family, that meets the needs of exactly this new world of working in a hybrid environment of remote or in office, that allows for 2 hours of care versus being a monolithic 9 to 5 drop off at a daycare. You're really seeing this infrastructure take place. It's been exciting because we've seen this transformation occur over the last year, and we think this is nothing but the state of the future. So leading the company that I was fortunate enough to take into 3 weeks before the pandemic, the silver lining inside of a horrible environment. But what I'd say is we really are on the precipice in the front of really leading into that transformation and going into what parents need. And for myself, I have 2 6-year-old twin boys, so the pain is real. Like, I've had kids running around. I'm surprised they're not running in behind me right now. We've been configuring care, working with families, working with the different nanny or babysitters that we have available to us. And so I understand it personally. I understand it exactly what's going on and exactly where it's happening. So it's been a fascinating transformation to be on the forefront of, and I think this is just the beginning.
I hope our members in the stream send some empathy your way. He started as Care.com CEO with 2 6-year-old boys. They must have been 5 or maybe when you started. And so that must have been a very challenging personal experience. Tina, Tim just used a word that I don't think was commonplace even a year ago when we talked about caregiving, and it was infrastructure. Thinking about caregiving as infrastructure that this country needs. Given your perspective, given how many decades you've been working on equity issues, is that novel, and how did that change happen in terms of how we're thinking about caregiving in this country?
Well, it is new, and I want to give the new administration credit for actually adopting that framework, seeing caregiving as part of the critical infrastructure this country needs to get the American economy going again, to get American workers back to work. It's an infrastructure we have lacked, and we are behind the rest of the world in not having. And what do we mean by that? Carolyn, you did it in your setup piece. It's not just childcare, which gets a lot of attention usually. It's also elder care, and for the disabled, and for caregivers themselves, having labor protections and job protections and wage protections for caregivers. And it's about paid leave too. It's about having flexibility in your scheduling, as Tim mentioned, for yourself as a worker to be able to self-care and care for those in your family when you need it, when it happens. Your caregiving needs is not the same throughout your entire career. It's not going to be the same if you're the employer for your workers. Your workers are going to be in different places in their lives at different moments in time, and you have to have flexible arrangements to meet all of those. So the infrastructure we're talking about is comprehensive, covers all of those issues, and we need to invest in them like we invest in roads and bridges. I keep saying, we're talking a lot about public infrastructure and hard infrastructure on building back the roads and bridges that are crumbling that we need to get people to work. Well, before you leave your house to go drive across that road or bridge, you need somebody at home taking care of the children in your lives, or your elderly parents, or whatever else you've got going on. That is as critical, and we see it right now, in getting American workers back to work as that road or bridge. And so investing in these jobs builds our infrastructure. We did the economic analysis of Time's Up. Actually, before the current administration came into office, we used their campaign proposal of a $770 billion 10-year investment in a caregiving infrastructure. We did the economic analysis that shows if you make those investments, you create as many as 2 million new jobs a year. You generate as much as $220 billion of economic activity every year. So it is as stimulative to our economy as that new road or bridge.
Well, Tina, let's talk about those jobs a little bit more. So Biden's $775 billion plan, some are saying could create as many as 5.3 million jobs. But professional caregivers are among some of the lowest paid workers in this industry. It's not an attractive industry to go into. A prominent part of the workforce are women and women of color. Tim, I'll start with you. What in your mind needs to change to ensure that these jobs are not just jobs, but good jobs?
Yeah, the professionalization of the workforce is critical here. And what I love about what Time's Up's doing and the work that we also have at CARE is we really look at this workforce as a galvanized workforce that is professional. They need to be paid professionally. Companies need to come in and help subsidize, as they're doing as part of the Time's Up initiative, but also as providing benefits through care, right? Companies can come and subsidize care. And it really moves the wages and the labor up. We really need to move the economy out of paying under the table and paying above board. Because then what ends up happening is you get benefits and you get all of the aspects that are necessary for there to be a professional workforce for the long term. But that means making childcare more affordable. That means getting rid of childcare deserts where there is no childcare available. We have to put all of those things moving in parallel and tandem. And at the output of all of that, you'll have more women, which, it's a predominantly female workforce, with over 87% of women actually being the caregivers, both across childcare and senior care. You'll have a more professional workforce. You'll be able to bring more women back into the workplace. You'll be then, as a byproduct of that, having more women participate in the workplace because they have childcare ready and on available. And then at the same time, you're also helping individuals of color. You have all of these effects that are occurring by moving it to a professional workforce and viewing it as a real job. The biggest thing that we're actually also focused on, in addition to professionalizing the workforce and finding flexible care for families, is getting rid of the shadow labor. There's a lot of hours lost in the shadow labor of the professional childcare industry, where it's marginal hours spent that they're not getting paid for. Once you bring all of that above board, you've got a workforce that's galvanized. And once you have governmental structures put in place to support that, both through economic means, but then also through policy means, it becomes flourishing all over for the economy and all over for families.
Well, I want to get to some of those policies with Tina in a second here. But before we do, we have many members joining us here on LinkedIn News Live who want to say hello to Tyron from Virginia. Samia from France, Danielle from Chicago, and Gary from California. Thanks for joining us on LinkedIn News Live. And if you're just joining us, I'm here with Tina Chen from Time's Up and Tim Allen from Care.com, and we're diving into the caregiving crisis. We're not going to fix it in the next 30 minutes, but we will come up together, hopefully, to discuss the solutions. So if you have questions for either of our guests, let us know in the stream. We'll have a conversation about that on today's show. Tina, you're on Capitol Hill. You're speaking to policy leaders about these issues. What's happening? Give us a little bit of the details that you're hearing and how the Biden administration is trying to get to some of the goals that Tim was just discussing.
Yeah, no, Tim was spot on exactly what we need to do to build this caregiving workforce. And, included in the American Families Plan proposal that President Biden has put on the table are investments in caregivers themselves, right? Bringing them up to a living wage, and minimum wage, giving them wage and hour protection. Let's be clear, part of the reason we don't have this now, we don't have caregiving seen as a real job and a professional job is historical. Right? We've always seen these as not real jobs that you have to pay for. It goes back to slavery where you didn't pay for the domestic work. And then in the New Deal, domestic workers were specifically left out of the wage and labor protections that were passed in the New Deal that has carried forward to today. They're still not as part of our formal labor economy or protected. And that affects all of us because guess what? Why do all of us have trouble finding quality caregivers, when we need it? It's because, we've got huge demand and not enough supply because it's not viewed as a profession people need to go into. So we all need that supply to grow. And so I'm really excited that this proposal is part of the comprehensive caregiving proposal that's in the package on the Hill. Now, look, let's be clear. Negotiations on the Hill these days are challenging, but, everyone is out there making the case. The administration has been making the case, leaders, the Speaker of the House and the majority leader in the Senate are making the case for this comprehensive proposal and why it's necessary, really making the link that you can't just do road and bridge infrastructure without caregiving infrastructure. I think one of the things that folks who are watching this can really take a hand and do is to voice this. We actually know from polling that everyone has done, not just Time's Up. We did it last December. Every Morning Consult, Politico, go down the list of polling on the Biden-Harris proposals, and they show that these caregiving proposals have huge bipartisan support, including the pay-fors. They have huge bipartisan support for investing in these and making the investments we need to on the public sector side. I think if you care about this, it doesn't matter who your legislator is in Congress. Let them know that this is a struggle that you are living with, and it's time that we build this caregiving infrastructure in this country.
Well, that's what I want to talk about with you two a little bit here, is that there are a lot of people who care about this, and the number of people who care about this is only growing, particularly when we think about elder care in this country. If you look at the US population, it's only getting older, and there are more people who are going to need elder care moving forward. And these are people's families that are at risk. On a personal note, Tim, I've gotten 3 caregivers through Care.com for my father. It was a great experience. But at the end of the day, these caregivers are coming in and out of the economy. It's at some points they're available, at some points they're not. And so I'm wondering why we have this dichotomy where this is something that is so crucial to so many people. It's impacting so many people's lives. And we're still at a place in 2021 where it's such a challenge to meet that demand and supply problem that Tina was just discussing.
Yeah, I'll jump in and just say it's surprising to me that we still have a subscription that it is about the sandwich generation. This is also now affecting millennials. People are having children older and older, and so what's ended up happening is that they've got parents that are starting to age out as well, so they need to start taking care of this issue at a younger age. This is a multi-generational issue that people need to address in terms of elder care, and it spans the acuity needs. It could be companion care all the way through to high dementia or other specialty needs that are needed. And there is a supply shortage across the nation, given what we had tapped into a little bit earlier regarding the professionalization. Even in regards to companion care, we run a survey at care.com. There's over 64% of elders want to age in place. They want to age gracefully. They want to age in their homes. They don't want to go to a senior living facility. And that actually shifted and skewed even higher after the pandemic in terms of wanting to age in place. The issue is the supply shortage of the professional caregivers. While there's professionals out there, they're in such high demand, and we haven't put the training and the infrastructure in place from a government policy perspective and a pay gap perspective in order to really galvanize this workforce and have them start meeting the demand that's occurring and is going to continue to facilitate to grow as millennials have to now start to take care of elder parents as well.
Well, speaking of some of these demographic trends, Tim, I did want to ask you, I know that care.com did some research on how views on elderly care have changed amid this pandemic. What did that research find, and how can it point both people in the stream who are going through these challenges right now in the right direction, but also businesses in the right direction in terms of how they're supporting caregivers right now?
Yeah, so the first and foremost is it does, more and more through our survey data, individuals are looking towards their companies in order to access care, and that includes elder care as well. And that's from, again, the companion care all the way through to the high acuity. They need the support, they need the business need. The business actually functions better through a productivity metric in terms of having employees have that back-end support of finding the care they need from an elder perspective. Some of the survey data we also found is there's a real abject fear out there in the environment. Parents are getting older and they're running out of, they don't have unlimited options in terms of what to do with their parents. My parents live 1,000 miles away and they're also, aging gracefully, thankfully. But I can tell you, I get those phone calls and there are moments where my father's fallen and I need to have him taken care of, or I need a companion to come and pick up his medicine. And you need those services to meet the moment of when you need them. And what's happening inside of the survey data from what we've seen is more and more there's a concern and a fear that the underlying infrastructure of what's been there in place, senior assisted living facilities, retirement communities, falling apart, not accessible, inaffordable. So we have to come up with a set of options, and that's what we're attempting to do at CARE, a set of options that are available and accessible at any moment in time.
Well, I'm so thankful for services like CARE. As I just told you, my father is aging as well. And so those phone calls that you get when they fall, it is just amazing to have services like CARE that can help you in moments like that. All right, professional caregiving is a problem that we're not going to solve right now, but I do want to take some time to talk about unpaid caregiving and just the momentous burden that working parents have had during this pandemic. Tina, we're 15 months into this pandemic. There are 5 million mothers who lost their jobs at the beginning of this, and more than 1 million and change are still trying to get back. What's top of mind for you with this caregiving conversation as we think about getting working mothers in particular back into the workplace?
Well, what's top of mind for me is this is a crisis, right? If we have had 3 crises that we've been focused on, a pandemic, an economic crisis, a racial reckoning in this country for the last year and a half, what we're right in the middle of right now is a 4th crisis, and it is on caregiving, because we see the number of women, not just the figures you cited, Carolyn, and the women who've lost their jobs and trying to come back. We've got about 2 million moms who are permanently removing themselves from the labor force. Mm-hmm. Women's labor force participation in this country is at levels we have not seen since the 1980s. So in a year and a half, we wiped out 3 decades worth of progress. And that's not just in one sector or one wage level. It's women up and down the wage scale. It's the women who are on their way to being the business leaders of the future who are dropping out at critical moments in their career. It's the women who are coming into the start of the pipeline, who are going to grow into these jobs, who are not coming back. And this can set us back a generation if we don't address this crisis right now, because of that unpaid burden of caregiving, where women are just saying, I can't do it. School's out. Camp's not happening. Look, when school comes back in the fall, I've still got a 12-year-old who's going to come home from school at 3 o'clock, and I don't know how to deal with that. And they're just saying, I can't do it anymore. So it's really, really important that we address this. And what I'm really excited about is employers are coming to the table on this in ways they never have before. I've been doing this work a long time, as you pointed out. We held a working family summit, in the Obama years in 2015 on this. And even then, employers sort of said, well, this might be nice to do as retention, maybe some saw it, some didn't. I think now really see it as a crisis. They are losing the talent that they need. They are really where they can't fill out their shifts on a manufacturing floor. And they're realizing that they have a stake in helping their employees address the caregiving crisis. And look, if we have that, American ingenuity in business is one of the things that built this country. And I actually am really excited about the opportunity in this to not just expand the kinds of solutions that we have already around more affordable childcare, more affordable in-home care services for the elderly and disabled, but let's innovate. Let's see what more we can do. Care.com itself was a great innovation on how you transform this very broad, unstructured, supply, and make it something that people can access. And let's see what else we can do to help innovate and grow. This is an industry that is poised for massive growth. And let's do it. And let's do it in a way, honestly, that actually empowers the women, as Tim pointed out, the predominantly women who are caregivers now, the predominantly Black, Brown, and Asian women who are these caregivers.
Right. And Tina, I've seen the same momentum moving in the right direction and employers really stepping into the table as well. But I think we have to be a little bit real here. We're still hearing from thousands of women on LinkedIn who are saying that their employers are not stepping up. I actually want to bring in a quote from a member named Courtney, who wrote in on LinkedIn saying that as a single working mom, I've been passed over for promotions because I take too much PTO to tend to my kids. If you're a minority single mom, well, maintaining employment that pays a living wage is damn near impossible. Now, Tim, I'm not expecting you to solve Courtney's particular crisis here, but in terms of what you're seeing with what's going on with women like Courtney and the things that they're experiencing, how do you see business kind of stepping up a little bit more and having an equal seat at the table?
I mean, I do want to say one thing that I always love being rotated, because I always get these just moments where it's just like the fact that we are in a society today where a woman has to make a choice between a career or her children is just. It's astounding to me. And I know it's the reality of what is being faced every day. And I don't want to equivocate that I'm actually facing that because as a man and where I exist, but it's just astounding to me that still exists. That we don't have a society where you can have it all, and we don't have the infrastructure where you can have it all, and we don't support that you can have it all. It's mind-blowing to me that at this juncture of society, there is that kind of desperate decision that has to be made in terms of, do I want a career, do I want a path, or do I want to take care of my children? You know, I come from a single mother, and my single mom was unwilling to accept that she would not have it all. And so she had a community around her of neighbors and friends, and none of the family members lived near her, where she would negotiate childcare for my sister and I. And she eventually became the COO of a large healthcare company in Oklahoma, but it was only out of sacrifice. And that's not to say that if you work harder or if you sacrifice, you can have it. She should have never been faced with that choice. And that's every day when I walk into care.com, I say, what are the decisions that we can make that my mom would have benefited my mom so she could have had access to care, that would have helped her journey be easier, that would have helped her path been a lot less frictioned? And I look at employers and I say, these are the benefits you provide. If you don't believe your company at this moment in time has women inside of it that are facing career path decisions versus family path decisions, that's not reality. And when you start to bring family care benefits into your ecosystem of your company, you then facilitate a woman, particularly a woman, to be able to make the decision to go, I have the support and the backing I need from an infrastructure perspective, and I can have the career path and decide what I'd like to do. Sorry, it just blows my mind still. Like that's a debate to it. Like it's crazy.
And I see your passion there, and I think I could speak for Tina when I say it blows both of our minds as well that this is still happening. So Tim's talking a little bit about what needs to happen on the benefit side of the house, but Tina, I want to ask you about just what needs to happen on the cultural side of the house here. You know, we heard from 60% of working mothers that we surveyed said that they had a hard time getting back into the workplace after taking time off to care for young children. Those numbers are only up in the pandemic.
Yeah, big sigh.
How do we get managers and executives to really understand what's at play here, but also how much benefit you have having working parents in your workplace, what that means for the vitality of your company?
No, absolutely. Look, actually, a different piece of work we did at Time's Up, we have a research lab, and we issued a paper, earlier this year called, using behavioral design research and methods to look at the way work is structured and to see, how just the structures, not attitudes, but how the structures affect the culture. And on the point about PTO, right? You can actually change your structure to support working parents, instead of making, employees have to come ask for PTO, right, to care for their kids. Make it so the default isn't you take your time, your family leave when you need it. That you actually make that the norm, right? If somebody has a family, a new family member, then say, all right, you're getting 12 weeks, and make them explain why they don't need the 12 weeks, or make their managers, more importantly, explain why the employees in their group didn't take their full 12 weeks. Switch the default. Recognize, one of the things that has come up is caregivers, and Tim pointed out in the story about his mom, they are great multitaskers, right? They are the original multitaskers. They have developed a skill set and a way of time efficient, work, holding different things, in their heads at the same time, being great producers, when they need to be. That's a skill. That's a skill we should be rewarding and recognizing instead of penalizing people for. So if you change your incentive structures, if you change the way you're measuring people's performance to value that skill and rewarding it, and the diversity of viewpoint, that brings you, if you are in a consumer, kind of industry, you need to know what parents are thinking. You need to be able to respond and have your product respond to what parents or caregivers or people who have the elderly in their home thinking about, and value that and reward it and create structures in your company that will actually set up those reward mechanisms.
A lot of great tips as always from Tina, and I'm seeing a ton of managers joining us in the stream right now. Tim, before I let you both go, anything that you want to say to them in terms of misconceptions around caregiving or ways that they can support their employees more fully in the office right now?
Yeah, I mean, Tina hit upon it. You look at your policies, you look at your benefits, you look how you become more of a facilitator in terms of helping ease the friction. It's an uncomfortable conversation to go to a manager and say, I need PTO. It's an uncomfortable conversation at moments where parents are like, hey, my kid is sick, right? It starts with empathy. And I think that we all need to understand that, look, when you lead with empathy and you look at the individuals of the organization and you have benefits that support that empathy, knowing that there is no such thing as a separation between work and life. Work and life coexist together, and they actually operate in this intertwined dance that you cannot separate or remove. And as soon as we start to realize that, and as soon as we start to put benefits and structures in place that actually support that dance, what you'll end up seeing is that flexibility, choice, the ability for access as provided, like even at Care, like we work to provide access and that ease. Once you provide that, your productivity, your loyalty of your employee base, and the ability to attract talent actually magnifies in significant proportion.
Well, I can't think of a better note to end on than that, Tim. Tim, it's always so great to speak with you. We unpacked a lot in our 30 minutes together. As always, I appreciate your perspective on these issues.
Thank you so much.
That was Tina Chen and Tim Allen of Care.com. Tina Chen's with Time's Up, talking to us about the ongoing caregiving crisis and what we can do on the policy side as well as the business side to solve it. And to continue the conversation with Tina and Tim, be sure to check out the news module to the right of your LinkedIn feed where this story is happening, among others, or click into that search box. All right, tomorrow, my colleague Andrew Seaman will be sitting down with Haley Sudbury on Get Hired Live to answer your questions on the hiring process. That's at 12 Eastern tomorrow from the LinkedIn news page. I'm Caroline Fairchild. Thank you so much for watching LinkedIn News Live.